The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, Chapter 10, page 127. The First Joke and Other Matters. It was, of course, the lion's voice. The children had long felt sure that he could speak, yet it was a lovely and terrible shock when he did. Out of the trees, wild people stepped forth, gods and goddesses of the wood. With them came fauns and satyrs and dwarfs. Out of the river rose the river god with his naiad daughters. And all these and all the beasts and birds in their different voices, low or high, or thick or clear, replied, "Hail, Aslan! We hear and obey. We are awake, we love, we think, we speak, we know. But please, we don't know very much yet," said a nosy and snorty kind of voice, and that really did make the children jump, for it was the cab horse who had spoken. "Good old Strawberry," said Polly. "I am glad he was one of the ones picked out to be a talking beast." And the cabby, who was now standing beside the children, page 128, said, "Strike me pink, I always did say that horse had a lot of sense, though." "Creatures, I give you yourselves," said the strong, happy voice of Aslan. "I give to you forever this land of Narnia. I give you the woods, the fruit, the rivers. I give you the stars, and I give you myself. The dumb beasts whom I have not chosen are yours also. Treat them gently and cherish them, but do not go back to their ways, lest you cease to be talking beasts. For out of them you were taken, and into them you can return. Do not so." "No, Aslan, we won't," said everyone, but one perky jackdaw added in a loud voice, "No fear," and everyone else had finished just before he had said it, so that his words came out quite clear in a dead silence, page 129. And perhaps you have found out how awful that can be, say at a party. The jackdaw became so embarrassed that it hid its head under its wing as if it were going to sleep, and all the other animals began making various queer noises, which are their ways of laughing, and which, of course, no one has ever heard in our world. They tried at first to repress it, but Aslan said, "Laugh and fear not, creatures. Now that you are no longer dumb and witless, you need not always be grave, for jokes as well as justice come with speech." So they all let themselves go, and there was such merriment that the jackdaw himself plucked up courage again and perched on the cab horse's head between its ears, clapping its wings, and said, "Aslan, Aslan, have I made the first joke? Will everyone always be told how I made the first joke?" "No, little friend," said the lion, "you have not made the first joke. You have only been the first joke." Then everyone laughed more than ever, but the jackdaw didn't mind and laughed just as loud till the horse shook its head and the jackdaw lost its balance and fell off. But remember, its wings, they were still new to it before it reached the ground. "And now," said Aslan, "Narnia is established." Page 130. "We must take thought for keeping it safe. I will call some of you to my council. Come hither to me, you the chief dwarf, and you the river god, and you Oak the he-owl, and both the ravens and the bull-elephant. We must talk together, for though the world is not 5 hours old, an evil has already entered it." The creatures he had named came forward, and he turned away eastward with them. The others all began talking, saying things like, "What did he say had entered the world? An evil? What's an evil?" "No, he didn't say an evil. He said an weevil? Well, what's that?" "Look here," said Digory to Polly. "I've got to go after him. Aslan, I mean the lion. I must speak to him." It's page 131. "Do you think we can?" said Polly. "I wouldn't dare." "I've got to," said Digory. "It's about Mother. If anyone could give me something that would do her good, it would be him." "I'll come along with you," said the cabby. "I like the looks of him, and I don't reckon these other beasts will go for us, and I want a word with old Strawberry." So all three of them stepped out boldly, or as boldly as they could, toward the assembly of animals. The creatures were so busy talking to one another and making friends that they didn't notice the three humans until they were very close. Nor did they hear Uncle Andrew, who was standing trembling in his button boots a good way off and shouting, but by no means at the top of his voice, "Digory, come back! Come back at once when you're told! I forbid you to go a step further!" When at last they were right in among the animals all stopped talking and stared at them. "Well," said the he-beaver at last, "what in the name of Aslan are these?" "Please," began Digory in a rather breathless voice, when a rabbit said, "They're kind of large lettuce, that's my belief," page 132. "No, we're not, honestly, we're not," said Polly hastily. "We're not at all nice to eat." "There," said the mole, "they can talk. Whoever heard of talking lettuce?" "Perhaps they're the second joke," suggested the jackdaw. A panther, which had been washing its face, stopped for a moment to say, "Well, if they are, they're nothing like so good as the first one. At least I don't see anything very funny about them." It yawned and went on with its wash. "Oh, please," said Digory, "I'm in such a hurry, I want to see the lion." All this time the cabby had been trying to catch Strawberry's eye. Now he did. "Now, Strawberry, old boy," he said, "you know me. You ain't going to stand there and say as you don't know me." "What's the thing talking about, horse?" said several voices. "Well," said Strawberry very slowly, "I don't exactly know. I think most of us don't know much about anything yet, but I have a sort of idea. I've seen a thing like this before. I have a feeling I've lived somewhere else or was something else before Aslan woke us all up a few minutes ago. It's all very muddled, like a dream. But there were things like these there in the dream." "What?" said the cabby. "Not know me? Me, what used to bring you a hot mash of an evening when you was out of sorts? Me, what rubbed you down proper? Me, what never forgot to put your cloth on you if you were standing in the cold? I wouldn't have thought of you, Strawberry." 133. "It does begin to come back," said the horse thoughtfully. "Yes, let me think now, let me think. Yes, you used to tie a horrid black thing behind me and then hit me with to make me run. And however far I ran, this black thing would always be coming rattle, rattle behind me. We are living to earn, see," said the cabby. "Yours same as mine. And if there hadn't been no work and no wit, there have been no stable, no hay, no mash, no oats, for you did get a taste of oats when I could afford them, which no one can deny." "Oats?" said the horse, pricking up his ears. "Yes, I remember something about that. Yes, I remember more and more. You were always sitting up somewhere behind, and I was always running in front, pulling you in the black thing. I know I did all of the work." "Summer, I grant you," said the cabby. "Hot work for you and a cool seat for me, but what about winter, old boy, when you was keeping yourself warm and I was sitting up there with my feet like ice and my nose fair pinched off me with the wind and my hands that numb I couldn't hardly," page 134, "hold the reins?" "It was a hard, cruel country," said Strawberry. "There was no grass, all hard stones." "Too true, mate, too true," said the cabby. Well, it was. I always did say those paving stones weren't fair on any horse. That's Lunnon, that is. I didn't like it no more than what you did. You were a country horse, and I was a country man. I used to sing in a choir, I did, down at home, but there wasn't a living for me there." "Oh, please, please," said Digory, "could we get on? The line's getting further and further away. I do want to speak to him so dreadfully badly." "Look here, Strawberry," said the cabby. "This young gentleman has something on his mind that he wants to talk to the lion about. Him you call Aslan. Suppose you was to let him ride on your back, which he'd take it very kindly, and trot him over to where the lion is, and me and the little girl will be following along." "Ride?" said Strawberry. "Oh, I remember now. That means sitting on my back. I remember there used to be a little one of you two-leggers who used to do that long ago. He used to have little hard, square lumps of white stuff that he gave me. They tasted, oh, wonderful, sweeter than grass." "Ah, that'd be sugar," said the cabby. "Please, Strawberry," begged Digory, do let me get up and take me to Aslan," page 135. "Well, I don't mind," said the horse, "not for once in a way. Up you get." "Go, Strawberry," said the cabby. Younger, I'll give you a lift." Digory was soon on Strawberry's back and quite comfortable, for he had ridden bareback before on his own pony. "Now do get up, Strawberry," he said. "You don't happen to have a bit of that white stuff about you, I suppose," said the horse. "No, I'm afraid I haven't," said Digory. "Well, it can't be helped," said Strawberry, and off they went. At that moment a large bulldog, who had been sniffing and staring very hard, said, "Look, isn't there another one of those queer creatures over there beside the river under the trees?" Then all the animals looked and saw Uncle Andrew standing very still among the rhododendrons and hoping he wouldn't be noticed. "Come on," said several voices, "let's go and find out." So while Strawberry was briskly trotting away with Digory in one direction and Polly and the cabby were following on foot, most of the creatures rushed toward Uncle Andrew with roars, barks, grunts, and various noises of cheerful interest. We must now go back a bit and explain what, page 136, the whole scene had looked like from Uncle Andrew's point of view. It had not made at all the same impression on him as on the cabby and the children, for what you see and hear depends a good deal on where you are standing. It also depends on what sort of person you are. Ever since the animals had first appeared, Uncle Andrew had been shrinking further and further back into the thicket. He watched them very hard, of course, but he wasn't really interested in seeing what they were doing, only in seeing whether they were going to make a rush at him. Like the witch, he was dreadfully practical. He simply didn't notice that Aslan was choosing one pair at every kind of beast. All he saw, or thought he saw, was a lot of dangerous, wild animals walking vaguely about. And he kept on wondering why the other animals didn't run away from the big lion. When the great moment came and the beast spoke, he missed the whole point for a rather interesting reason. When the lion had first begun singing long ago, it was still quite dark, he had realized that the noise was a song, and he had disliked the song very much and made him think and feel things he did not want to think and feel. Then when the sun rose and he saw that the singer was a lion, only a lion, he said to himself, he tried his hardest to make believe that it wasn't singing and never had been singing, only roaring as any lion might in a zoo or in our own world. Page 137. Of course, it can't really have been singing, he thought. I must have imagined it. I've been letting my nerves get out of order. Who ever heard of a lion singing? And the longer and more beautiful the lion sang, the harder Uncle Andrew tried to make himself believe that he could hear nothing but roaring. Now, the trouble about trying to make yourself stupider than you really are is that you very often succeed. Uncle Andrew did. He soon did hear nothing but roaring in Aslan's song. Soon he couldn't have heard anything else, even if he had wanted to. And when at last the lion spoke and said, "Naughty, awake," he didn't hear any words. He only heard a snarl. When the beast spoke in answer, he only heard barkings, growlings, bayings, and howlings. And when they laughed, well, you can imagine. That was worse for Uncle Andrew than anything that had happened yet. Such a horrid, bloodthirsty din of hungry and angry brutes he had never heard in his life. Then, to his utter rage and horror, he saw the other three humans actually walking out into the open to meet the animals. "The fools," he said to himself. "Now those brutes will eat the rings along with the children, and I'll never be able to get home again. What a selfish little boy that Digory is. And the others are just as bad. They want to throw away their own lives. That's their business. But what about me? They don't," page 138, "seem to think of that. No one thinks of me." Finally, when a whole crowd of animals came rushing toward him, he turned and ran for his life, and now anyone could see that the air of the young world was really doing the old gentleman good. In London he had been far too old to run. Now he ran at a speed which would have made him certain to win the 100 yards race at any prep school in England. His coat-tails flying out behind him were a fine sight. But of course it was no use. Many of the animals behind him were swift ones. It was the first run they had ever taken in their lives, and they were all longing to use their new muscles. After him, they shouted. "Perhaps he's the Nebel! Tally-ho! Tentivy! Cut him off! Round him up! Keep it! Hurrah!" In a very few minutes, some of them got ahead of him. They lined up in a row and barred his way. Others hemmed him from behind. Wherever he looked, he saw terrors, antlers of great elks and the huge face of an elephant. Page 139, towered over him. Heavy, serious-minded bears and boars grunted behind him. Cool-looking leopards and panthers with sarcastic faces, as he thought, stared at him and waved their tails. What struck him most of all was the number of open mouths. The animals had really opened their mouths to pant. He thought they had opened their mouths to eat him. Uncle Andrew stood trembling and swaying this way and that. He had never liked animals at the best of times, being usually rather afraid of them, and of course years of doing cruel experiments on animals had made him hate and fear them far more. "Now, sir," said the bulldog in his businesslike way, "are you an animal, vegetable, or mineral?" That was what it really said, but all Uncle Andrew heard was grrr. Page 140. Chapter 11. Digory and his uncle are both in trouble. You may think the animals were very stupid not to see at once that Uncle Andrew was the same kind of creature as the two children in the cabby, but you must remember that the animals knew nothing about clothes. They thought that Polly's frock and Digory's Norfolk suit and the cabby's bowler hat were as much parts of them as their own fur and feathers. They wouldn't have known even that those three were all of the same kind if they hadn't spoken to them, and if Strawberry had not seemed to think so. And Uncle Andrew was a great deal taller than the children and a good deal thinner than the cabby. He was all in black except for his white waistcoat, not very white by now, and the great gray mop of his hair, now very wild indeed, didn't look to them like anything they had seen in the other three humans, so it was only natural that they should be puzzled. Worst of all, he didn't seem to be able to talk. 141. He had tried to when the bulldog spoke to him, or, as he thought, first snarled and then growled at him. He held out his shaking hand and gasped, "Good doggy," then "Poor old fellow." But the beasts could not understand him any more than he could understand them. They didn't hear any words, only a vague sizzling noise. Perhaps it was just as well they didn't, for no dog that I ever knew, least of all a talking dog of Narnia, likes being called a good doggy then, any more than you would like being called my little man. Then Uncle Andrew dropped down in a dead faint. "There," said a warthog, "it's only a tree. I always thought so." Remember, they had never yet seen a faint or a fall. Page 142. The bulldog, who had been sniffing Uncle Andrew all over, raised its head and said, "It's an animal, certainly an animal. Probably the same kind as those other ones." "I don't see that," said one of the bears. "An animal wouldn't just roll over like that. We're animals. We don't roll over. We stand up. Like this." He rose to his hind legs, took a step backwards, tripped over a low branch, and fell flat on his back. "The third joke, the third joke, the third joke," said the jackdaw in great excitement. "I still think it's a sort of tree," said the warthog. "If it's a tree," said the other bear, "there might be bees' nest in it." "I'm sure it's not a tree," said the badger. "I have had a sort of idea it was trying to speak before it toppled over." "That was only the wind in its branches," said the warthog. "You surely don't mean," said the jackdaw to the badger, "that you think it's a talking animal? I didn't say any words." "And yet, you know," said the elephant, the she-elephant, of course, her husband, as you remember, had been called away by Aslan. "And yet, you know, it might be an animal of some kind. Mightn't the whitish lump at this end be a sort of face? And couldn't those holes be eyes and a mouth? No nose, of course, but then, one mustn't be narrow-minded. Very few of us have what could exactly be called a nose." She squinted down the length of her own trunk with pardonable pride. "I object to that remark very strongly," said the bulldog. "The elephant is quite right," said the tapper. "I tell you what," said the donkey brightly, "perhaps it's an animal that can't talk but thinks it can." "Can it be made to stand up?" said the elephant thoughtfully. She took the limp form of Uncle Andrew gently in her trunk and set him up on end, upside down, unfortunately, so that 2 half-sovereigns, 3 half-crowns, and a sixpence fell out of his pocket. But it was no use. Uncle Andrew merely collapsed again. "There," said several voices, "and it isn't an animal at all. It's not alive." "I tell you it is an animal," said the bulldog. "Smell it for yourself." "Smelling isn't everything," said the elephant. "Why," said the bulldog, "if a fellow can't trust his nose, what is he to trust?" "Well, his brains, perhaps," she replied mildly. "I object to that remark very strongly," said the bulldog. 144. "Well, we must do something about it," said the elephant, "because it may be the Nevil, and it may be shown to Aslan. What do most of us think? Is it an animal or something of the tree kind?" "Tree, tree," said a dozen voices. "Very well," said the elephant. "Then, if it's a tree it wants to be planted, we must dig a hole." The two moles settled that part of the business pretty quickly. There was some dispute as to which way up Uncle Andrew ought to be put into the hole, and he had a very narrow escape from being put in head foremost. Several animals said his legs must be his branches, and therefore the gray fluffy thing, they meant his head, must be his root. But then others said that the forked end of him was the muddier, and that it spread out more, so as roots ought to do. So finally he was planted right way up. When they had patted down the earth, it came up above his knees. "It looks dreadfully withered," said the donkey. "Of course it wants some watering," said the elephant. "I think I might say, meaning no offense to anyone present, that perhaps for that sort of work my kind of nose—" "I object to that remark very strongly," said the bulldog, but the elephant walked quietly to the river, filled her trunk with water, and came back to attend Uncle Andrew. The sagacious animal, page 145, went on doing this till gallons of water had been squirted over him, and water was running out of the skirts of his frock coat as if he had been for a bath with all his clothes on. In the end it revived him. He awoke from his faint. What awakening it was, but we must leave him to think over his wicked deed, if he was likely to do anything so sensible, and turn to more important things. Strawberry trotted on with Digory on his back till the noise of the other animals died away, and now the little group of Aslan and his chosen counselors was quite close. Digory knew that he couldn't possibly break in on so solemn a meeting, but there was no need to do so. At a word from Aslan, the he-elephant, the ravens, and all the... Page 146. The rest of them drew aside. Digory slipped off the horse and found himself face to face with Aslan. And Aslan was bigger and more beautiful and more brightly golden and more terrible than he had thought. He dared not look into the great eyes. "Please, Mr. Lion." "Aslan, sir," said Digory, will you give me some magic fruit of this country to make my mother well?" He had been desperately hoping that the lion would say yes. He had been horribly afraid it might say no, but he was taken aback when it did neither. "This is the boy," said Aslan, looking not at Digory, but at his counselors. "This is the boy who did it." "Oh dear," thought Digory, "what have I done now?" "Son of Adam," said the lion, "there is an evil witch abroad in my new land of Narnia. Tell these good beasts how she came here." A dozen different things that he might say flashed through Digory's mind, but he had the sense to say nothing except the exact truth. "I brought her, Aslan," he answered in a low voice. "For what purpose?" "I wanted to get her out of my own world and back into her own I thought I was taking her back to her own place." 147. "How came she to be in your world, son of Adam?" By magic." The lion said nothing, and Digory knew that he had not told enough. "It was my uncle, Aslan," he said. "He sent us out of our own world by magic rings. At least I had to go because he sent Polly first, and then we met the witch in a place called Charn, and she just held on to us when—" "You met the witch?" said Aslan in a low voice which had the threat of a growl in it. "She woke up," said Digory wretchedly, and then turning very white. I woke her because I wanted to know what would happen if I struck a bell. Polly didn't want to. It wasn't her fault. I fought her. I know I shouldn't have. I think I was a bit enchanted by the writing under the bell." "Do you?" asked Aslan, still speaking very low and deep. "No," said Digory. I see now I wasn't. I was only pretending." There was a long pause, and Digory was thinking all the time, "I've spoiled everything. There's no chance of getting anything for Mother now." When the lion spoke again, it was not to Digory. Page 148. "You see, friends," he said, "that before the new clean world I gave you is 7 hours old, a force of evil has already entered it, waked and brought hither by this son of Adam. The beasts, even Strawberry, all turned their eyes on Digory till he felt that he wished the ground would swallow him up. But do not be cast down," said Aslan, still speaking to the beasts. "Evil will come of that evil, but it is still a long way off, and I will see to it that the worst falls upon myself. In the meantime, let us take such order that for many 100 years this shall be a merry land and a merry world, and as Adam's race has done the harm, Adam's race shall help to heal it. Draw near, you other two." The last words were spoken to Polly and the cabby, who had now arrived. Polly, all eyes and mouth, was staring at Aslan and holding the cabby's hand rather tightly. The cabby gave one glance at the lion and took off his bowler hat. No one had yet seen him without it, and when it was off, he looked younger and nicer, and more like a countryman and less like a London cabman. "Son," said Aslan to the cabby, "I have known you long. Do you know me?" "Well, no, sir," said the cabby. "Leastways, not in an ordinary manner of speaking. Yet I feel somehow, if I may make so free, as how we met before." Page 149. "It is well," said the lion. "You know better than you think you know, and you shall live to know me better yet. How does this land please you?" "It is a fair treat, sir," said the cabby. "Would you like to live here always?" "Well, you see, sir, I'm a married man," said the cabby. "If my wife was here, neither of us would ever want to go back to London, I reckon. We're both country folks, really." Aslan threw up his shaggy head, opened his mouth, and uttered a long, simple, single note, not very loud, but full of power. Polly's heart jumped in her body when she heard it. She felt sure that it was a call, and that anyone who heard that call would want to obey it, and, what's more, would be able to obey it. However, many worlds and ages lay between them, and so, though she was filled with wonder, she was not really astonished or shocked when all of a sudden a young woman with a kind, honest face stepped out of nowhere and stood beside her. Polly knew at once that it was the cabby's wife, fetched out of our world, not by any tiresome magic rings, but quickly, simply, and sweetly, as a bird flies to its nest. The young woman had apparently been in the middle of a washing day, for she wore an apron, her sleeves were rolled up to the elbow, and there were soap suds on her hands. If she had had time to put on her good clothes, her, page 150, best hat had imitation cherries on it, she would have looked dreadful. As it was, she looked rather nice. Of course, she thought she was dreaming. That was why she didn't rush across to her husband and ask him what on earth had happened to the both of them. But when she looked at the lion, she didn't feel quite so sure it was a dream. Yet for some reason she did not appear to be very frightened. Then she dropped a little half-curtsy, as some country girls still knew how to do those days. After that she went and put her hand into the cabby's and stood there looking round her a little shyly. "My children," said Aslan, fixing his eyes on both of them, "you are to be the first king and queen of Narnia." Page 151. The cabby opened his mouth in astonishment, and his wife turned very red. "You shall rule and name all these creatures, and do justice among them, and protect them from their enemies when enemies arise. And enemies will arise, for there is an evil witch in this world." The cabby swallowed hard 2 or 3 times and cleared his throat. "Begging your pardon, sir," he said, "and thanking you very much, I'm sure, which my missus does the same. I ain't no sort of chap for a job like that. I ain't never had much edication, you see." "Well," said Aslan, "you can use a spade and a plough and raise food out of the earth." "Yes, sir, I could do a bit of that sort of work, being brought up to it like." "Can you rule these creatures kindly and fairly, remembering they are not slaves like the dumb beasts of the world you were born in, but talking beasts and free subjects?" "I see that, sir," replied the cabby. "I tried to do the square thing by them all." "And would you bring up your children and grandchildren to do the same?" "It'd be up to me to try, sir. I'd do my best, wouldn't we, Nellie?" "And you wouldn't have favorites either among your own children or among the other creatures?" Or 152. "Let any hold another under or use it hardly?" "I never could abide such goings on, sir, and that's the truth. I'd give 'em what for if I caught 'em at it," said the cabby. All through this conversation his voice was growing slower and richer, more like the country voice he must have had as a boy, and less like the sharp, quick voice of a cockney. "And if enemies came against the land, for enemies will arise, and there was war." That's Aslan. "And if enemies came against the land, for enemies will arise, and there was war, would you the first in the charge and the last in the retreat?" "Well, sir," said the cabby very slowly, "a chap don't exactly know till he's been tried. I dare say I might turn out ever such a soft un. Never did no fighting except with my fists. I'd try, that is, I hope I'd try to do my bit." "Then," said Aslan, "you will have done all that a king should do. Your coronation will be held presently, And you and your children and grandchildren shall be blessed, and some will be kings of Narnia, and others will be kings of Archenland, which lies yonder over the southern mountains. And you, little daughter," here he turned to Polly, "are welcome. Have you forgiven the boy for the violence he did you in the hall of images in the desolate place of accursed Charn?" "Yes, Aslan, we've made it up," said Polly. "That is well," said Aslan, "and now for the boy himself." End of chapter 11.